Have you ever wondered why America invented its English? Did they hate Britishers? They didn't like the language? What if I tell you that's all a lie? What if we told you there's more to the story? Watch this video to find out. Hello everyone, welcome to our channel, The Shadow. Today, we will discuss how American English came into existence and how it differs from British English. But before we start, give this video a thumbs up. English, a language with 1.5 billion speakers across the globe, and the roots of the language dating back to the 5th century AD, is the most widely spoken language in the world. But there's one catch. English has two counterparts with visible differences. The first being British English, and the second being American English. Most of the world either falls into the above categories, or follows the global standard of International English. American English, commonly referred to as AME or US English, is the primary version of the English language spoken in the United States. With the US hosting approximately 240 million native speakers, it houses roughly 2/3 of the global English-speaking population, surpassing Britain's 57 million. However, when tracing chronicles of the English language, the journey of American English is notably shorter. Colonization and influences of different cultures and tribes. The origins of the English language in the United States can be traced back to the English brought over by settlers from the British Isles. These pioneers introduced their language to the New World, specifically the North American continent, which eventually became known as the United States. When faced with the challenges of a new land, early immigrants sought the correct terms to describe their novel experiences. They discovered unfamiliar plants, animals, foods, water bodies, landscapes, and weather phenomena, lacking appropriate English words for many of these elements. These pioneers adeptly adapted the language to convey their experiences. Many of these linguistic adaptations continue to be widely used in modern times. As they spread across the land and formed distinct communities, variations in the language began to surface, giving birth to unique regional dialects. In 1607, the foundations of Jamestown, Virginia were laid, marking the beginnings of English settlements in the Americas. This was soon followed by 12 more colonies along the Atlantic coast. The settlers, hailing from 17th century England, brought their native tongue. Engaging with Native Americans, primarily through frontier trade, became a rich wellspring for novel terms. The colonists, often finding native terminologies challenging to pronounce, adapted them. A rathcone, transformed into raccoon, Iscooterswash was condensed to squash, and check became woodchuck. While natives referred to thin cornmeal griddle cakes as jonnekin, the settlers coined them Johnny cakes. Beyond the initial British settlers, there was a consistent influx of immigrants from various European nations. The Dutch, for instance, established New Netherlands along the Hudson River, with New Amsterdam serving as its primary port in 1614. The Dutch enriched the English vocabulary with words like brief, meaning letter, yacht, denoting riverboat, and spook, indicating ghost. However, this colony eventually fell into the hands of the English, who renamed the port New York in 1664. A few years later, French settlers built a community in South Carolina. Presently, the interior lands were occupied by Scots-Irish and Germans. Africans undeniably contributed a distinct facet to American English. Terms like banjo, jazz, and okay have their roots in West African languages. During the colonial era, the emergence of regional dialects within American English can be discerned from the varied terms colonists used for identical items. For instance, while the Spanish in Florida termed any large feline as puma, those in Virginia favored mountain lion, South Carolinians said tiger, and Pennsylvanians opted for bobcat. In the context of corn, while all colonists concurred that the edible parts were kernels on a corn cob, they diverged on naming the outer layer. Virginians said shuck, New Englanders chose husk, and some others termed it trash. Although the French diminished their presence in the Ohio River Valley, post their loss in the French and Indian War, 1756 to 1763, their linguistic legacy persists in words like café, interpreted as barroom, chowder, derived from chaudière, meaning cauldron, and gopher, originating from the French term gouffre for honeycomb. It is important at this point to observe that, in addition to this large influx of immigrants, America had its indigenous population speaking numerous Native American languages, including Algonquian, Muskogean, and Penutian. These Native American languages became a rich source of words and expressions that the early colonists needed to describe their adopted homeland's new sights, tastes, and experiences. Many of the native languages, however, contain nasal and glottalized sounds unfamiliar to English speakers. From this huge mix of different communities, cultures, and dialects, the population also comprised people from varying social classes. The most significant group, however, was the forced migration of thousands of Africans through the slave trade, which spanned from the 17th century until its abolition in the 19th century. Despite their numbers, the influence of Africans on the language was minimal, largely due to the variety of tribes and the lack of regard for their language or traditions. Given their status as enslaved people, they were compelled to learn English as a lingua franca to communicate with their masters, leading to a form of Pidgin English. This evolved into one of the most distinct forms of American English, known as African American Vernacular English or Black English, spoken by over 25 million people in the United States. Immigration continued into the mid-20th century, notably from Mexico and other Hispanic countries. End of colonization and emergence of the New English era. A significant outcome of the diverse American populace and the intermingling of languages was harmonized by the English spoken by Americans. As the colonial era drew to a close, coinciding with the inaugural census in 1790, the American colonies were home to around 4 million inhabitants. Remarkably, 95% of this population traced their origins to the British Isles. The shaping of American English can largely be attributed to interactions with various foreign linguistic groups, stemming from both involuntary and voluntary migrations. Further enriching the American English vocabulary were contributions from African, Italian, Chinese, and German immigrants. The consistency of American English gave birth to a distinct rendition of the English language. Beyond just borrowing from other tongues, there was an innovation of new terms and syntactic patterns, driven by a sense of national pride among Americans who believed American English surpassed British English. This led to the coinage of words like underbrush and backwoods to mirror the evolving landscape. The 1776 Declaration of Independence served as a catalyst, inspiring visionaries like the lexicographer Noah Webster. In 1783, he introduced his spelling book, championing a spelling system distinct from British English. His efforts continued with the release of his Dissertation on the English Language in 1789 and culminated in the publication of an American Dictionary of the English Language in 1828. Webster's profound patriotism shone through his works, encapsulating his statement, "Our honor requires us to have a system of our own, in language as well as government." Webster's mission was to standardize the American language and safeguard it for posterity. It not only educated generations of children on the nuances of American English, but also set the tone for how American English was perceived in the broader English-speaking world. Webster deserves accolades for crafting what he proudly labeled as the inaugural comprehensive, unabridged American dictionary. This endeavor, which spans 3 decades, heralded the golden era of dictionaries authored in the U.S. While Noah Webster is prominently linked with championing linguistic nationalism through his advocacy for federal English, he wasn't the sole contributor. The Civil War, 1861 to 1865, profoundly impacted the Union's political, cultural, and linguistic landscape. By its onset, the U.S. had expanded its dominion to the Pacific, driven by a sense of purpose, encapsulated in the notion of the U.S.'s manifest destiny. For many, the quest for a distinct American identity was not just political, but also cultural. This journey would be incomplete without Americans embracing and taking pride in their unique linguistic heritage, a united nation bound by the belief that Americans should have a distinct language. Isolation from British English. Post the American Revolution, the frequency of direct interactions and voyages between Britain and the U.S. diminished. This separation paved the way for both English variants to develop and mature on their own distinct paths. During the 18th and 19th centuries, the British took great pleasure in mocking American speech, often with intense disdain. The emergence of novel American terms unfamiliar to the British only fueled this derision. John Witherspoon, a Scottish expatriate who held America in high regard and signatory of the Declaration of Independence, expressed his distaste for the evolving American linguistic nuances. In 1781, he noted encountering frequent grammatical errors, improprieties, and colloquialisms in various American settings, which he believed would be rare among his British counterparts of similar stature. Despite the passage of time, the hatred and contention that marked the language and dictionary battles of the 19th century lingered well into the 20th. This enduring strife underscores the adage that America and Britain are two nations divided by a common language. The rivalry between the two has been the subject of the debate longer than we thought. What do you think? Technological and cultural impacts. The U.S. expanded its global footprint in various ways by endorsing an open-door policy for China, mediating the Russo-Japanese War in 1905, backing the Panamanian Revolt against Colombia to pave the way for the Panama Canal, and frequently intervening in Latin American matters to ward off European influence and uphold American stakes. The acquisition of the Virgin Islands from Denmark and the US's entry into World War I in 1917 further underscored this expansionist approach. This global involvement influenced American English significantly. Moreover, American cultural pillars, from Hollywood's film industry and Southern jazz, and music to World War II participation, post-war tech innovations like computers, and the global reach of brands from Coca-Cola to Time magazine, have propelled American linguistic nuances worldwide. The media and entertainment sectors have been pivotal in molding and disseminating American English. Additionally, globalization has amplified the impact of American English on other English dialects. In the subsequent 20th and 21st centuries, the worldwide sway of American media, tech, and culture amplified the spread of American English and its unique expressions. As we wrap up the video, do you think it is right to say that the United States never invented or created its unique form of English? Instead, American English naturally developed as a distinct variant of British English, shaped by an intricate blend of historical, social, and cultural influences. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. If you like this video and want to see more content, hit that subscribe button. While you are still here, click on the screen to watch more from the world and economies.